And we're in Ottawa again, and we're with Monique Doolittle-Romas, who's many people know is Executive Director of the Canadian AIDS Society. And hello, welcome to Positive Light, Monique. Great to have you here. Now tell me about the event tonight. What are we doing here?
Tonight was such a special night for us to recognize our 25th anniversary, an anniversary we actually hoped we would never recognize or have to attend. But it's a special night for us to look back and look at our success, all the work we've done together, and to recognize the leaders who've come forward, who've inspired us over the last 25 years to fight the good fight.
Yes.
Never give up.
Yes. And tonight we chose a special person as leadership. I think the board chose David Ho. Tell me, you've had a few dealings with David. What do you think of that man?
David is inspiring. He reminds me of the work that is so important, and he touches all the right topics, and he knows how to touch everybody in their heart, and yet say the challenging things that still need to be said around safe sex, and it's all about love, and it's okay to have love, and that we all have some kind of addiction. His messages are powerful.
Yes, he's a giant. I've worked with David too. I respect him so much. You couldn't have picked a better person. I wanted to ask you, Monique, you have a pretty tough job now. We're going through all kinds of challenges right now. In some ways, this is not a good time for the AIDS movement. We've just had a change of government. What would be your message to people who are rather pessimistic about the next 4 years? What would you say to those people?
I'd say over the last 25 years, we've faced many challenges. In the early days, nobody wanted to fund the AIDS movement. Nobody wanted to come together, and the agencies and people living with HIV and their friends created the movement, created the agencies. If we did it then, we can do it now, and we have to find a way to keep moving forward. We have to work with the parties that are there, work with all of the political parties, and never give up, and keep fighting.
And you've chosen a path of diplomacy, I think, rather than marching in the streets. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's the right tactic?
I think it's a combination of tactics. I think the Canadian AIDS Society has chosen to try to be at the table to have the dialogue, and I think you saw tonight the different parties that we have, that we can have that conversation.
Now,
that doesn't preclude other people from marching on the street and saying what they have to say.
So we have those people who sit down on the streets and make a nuisance of themselves, and that's good too.
Absolutely. In fact, it demonstrates that when we speak to them, we're not speaking alone. Everybody does want to demonstrate. They do want to get out. They need to share that message.
Right. Monique, that's a good message. Tell me, why do you do this work? This must be one of the hardest jobs you could have. It must be very difficult and stressful. Tell me what it is that drives you.
In the late 80s, I lost a very close personal friend to AIDS. And when I lost him, I swore one day I would do something about it. I would make a difference. And it took me over 20 years to find that time, the right opportunity, and I'm inspired by the people I work with. And when I get discouraged, and there are days where it's challenging, I remember Al McNutt. I remember all of the amazing board people, and those that we've lost along the way, even in my 5 years.
Right.
We can't forget, and we have to keep up the fight. And I stand on the shoulders of those who come before me.
You give a good message there. Tell me one thing I'm going to ask you, and then we'll say goodbye, Monique. Tell me one thing about Monique that nobody really knows here in this room, that we can ask to put you on the spot. What are your passions outside AIDS? Put it that way. What do you do for...
My family is my biggest passion.
Yeah.
And in the summer, I love to be in my backyard, in my garden.
Are you gardening?
It's very concrete, because a lot of my work is not as concrete. It's shifting policies. I'm in my garden with my hands, never...
Get into the
tomatoes, the flowers, and that's my little haven.
That's great.
It means the world.
Monique Doolittle-Romas, thank you so much for talking to us, where you think you're one in a million. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.